welcome to Witchy Wednesday here at Ariel's Corner. This is Ariel Gatoga, and we are streaming live on YouTube. And moderating today for us are the lovely Diane and the lovely I Am Her Eminence. Thank you so much, moderators. And thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. We are going to do a Venus star talisman to Anael today. I'm hoping to get a decent take so that I can edit it and add a voiceover and actually have an instructional video for making star talismans. I have not been very happy with the other ones. So the way I think I'm going to do it today is having very little commentary. So I'll put on some music and I'll just kind of do the talisman. I'll try to drop in every so often and explain a little bit about what I'm doing. But then, of course, we will open it up for questions at the end. And I'm hoping that this will give me some footage that's more usable than the ones that I've had in the past. So that's what we are going to do today. And I hope everybody is having a wonderful day. Just as a reminder, you can join us on our website at arielscorner.com, and find all the plethora of free things that we have for you there, including courses, free booklets, which are mini courses. This is one of those mini courses, this booklet, How to Make Star Talismans. And I've put the link to that booklet in the video description of this video. And we have free lectures and free guided meditation. So have a good time on our website, arielscorner.com. Also, there's a whole section on psalm magic. I've just added a new couple of pages. One has links to all of the psalm videos in an easier to find format, so that if you're looking for a specific psalm video, it's easier to find. So you can look up under the psalm magic section. There's a drop down menu, and one of those items is psalm videos. There's also psalm power, or the powers and uses of the psalms powers and uses, and that one's got a subject index, which is something that we hadn't had before. So there's some basic subjects, and then a list of psalms commonly used for those subjects, and then right by that there's a link to each and every each and every psalm in the Psalter, and then I've also included another iteration of the psalm videos database underneath that. So it's a lot easier for you to find the psalm that you're looking for. So I did work on that. Even though it was my birthday and I wasn't supposed to do anything Ariel's Corner, I was very inspired to do that. So I thought to myself, it's my birthday. I can do psalms if I want to. Nobody can say no to me. Anyway, so that's available for you. I hope you enjoy it. And I think that's about it. I'm going to start with a meditation today so that I'm a little bit more centered, and maybe that'll help me get things done well. If you are in a place where it is safe and appropriate, please close your eyes and take some nice, long, slow, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. With every inhale, feel more light and peace entering your body and mind. With every exhale, let go of all the tension in your body, along with anything in your mind you do not want. Inhaling peace and exhaling as you let go. We picture ourselves on top of a beautiful mountain, in the center of a circular grove of trees. In the center of our circle, a bonfire blazes forth, lighting us and the grove with a sacred golden light. This is the light of perfect love and perfect trust, and it easily and effectively burns away everything unlike itself, leaving us safe and serene. Into this space, we invoke the presence of our Creator. To many of us, our Creator reveals themselves to be a mother and father, a goddess and God. We also invoke and invite the presence of our angels, our guides, our teachers. We ask that we be guided as we walk upon the way, becoming happier, more magical, wiser, more powerful, and more loving people. Thank you very much. Blessed be. Okay, we will start out. I'm going to just get us started, and then I'll turn on some music. And if you have any questions, just put them right in the chat thread, and I will get to them before the end of the stream. So the first thing you want to do before you construct your star is you want to have some basic materials. So I have here, I've already cut out a square. Today I'm using this Bristol board just because I'm going to be using some colored pencils, and it seems to work better on the colored pencils, but you can use any kind of paper that you want, or cardstock. A pencil, an eraser, some scissors, a protractor, a compass, a ruler, and then if you are working with colored pencils, make sure that you have a sharpener. You don't need to work with color magic if you don't want to. You can just do a plain black on white and it works just fine. But today I'm also going to be employing color magic. So those of you who have taken my course in color magic, you will understand what we're doing. If not, that course is free of charge. So here's our color wheel. Today what I've decided to do is I'm going to use this blue-green as the main color, and then I'm going to incorporate a little bit of green and a little bit of blue. Oops, what did I do? I didn't mean to do that, sorry. I'm going to do it this way. It's my main color is this blue-green, but I'm going to use a little bit on the either side of the color wheel. Plus, I'm going to use some coral, which is this red-orange, as a complement. So it's a little opposite of what I normally do. So what I've done is I've chosen my colors ahead of time, so that way I'm not hunting for colors. So this here is going to be my basic color scheme, light, medium, dark, this sort of blue-green. And then I'm going to use a little bit of blues, a little bit of the greens, and then some of these corals. And then here's the one ink pen I'm going to be using, which is a redder version of the coral, and that'll help it pop. And I'll probably use that. I'll probably use that ink to make the actual star, and then I'll color in the background and things like that. Now, just in case I'm not feeling like coloring the large spaces too much with the pencils, I also have some crayons here that I might use. And where's my color? I think it would be this one here. Make sure this is right. It's a little bit too dark. Hold on. I should have gotten this out first. Oh, here we go. So if I want to use a little bit of this for the background, I will as well. Okay, so I can put that over there, put these away. Then you'll also want a candle, which is actually optional. I'm going to use an LED candle. And if you want to use perfume, I'm going to use this Beatrix Rose perfume by Coswell Mozzie, but any rose is really good for Anael. But there's also other perfumes that you can use for Venus and Anael. It doesn't have to be rose. All right, let's get going. Let's get a little bit of music on. All right, well, that does it. So you can see you don't have to make anything like grand, or it doesn't have to be a work of art necessarily. The idea is just to get the star drawn first, and then to add some symbols that represent the planet and or angel you're working on. And you can write, if you desire, you can write the god name that rules the sphere. This is sphere number 7 on the outside of the circle. And if you decide to use color magic, remember it's really all about just getting color down on the page. It doesn't matter if it's frameable, because you're not going to frame it. You're going to rip it up soon. So we'll leave this, we'll let this candle burn down and out, or in the case of this LED candle, we just leave it on for at least an hour and thinking about what it is that we want. So I called in the idea of our first goal being peace, our second goal being the quality of spirit that is ruled by the angel, and that is the quality of love. The quality of spirit is love, and then our desire for the day was beauty, and beauty in whatever that means for you. So you're more than welcome to this energy of this talisman if you desire to receive it. And so what I'll do is, like I said, I'll leave this until the candle burns down and out, or for our case, it's a minimum of an hour with the LED candle. And then I'll put this away. Now, normally we would have done this on a Friday during the waxing moon, but that's okay. Anael's not going to penalize us for that. I just wanted to make sure to get this done on a Witchy Wednesday. So this will be fine and it'll work. And I'll just hold on to this till the following, oh, this is the waxing moon. Never mind. I don't know what my brain is doing. I'll hold on to this till the next new moon at any rate, and then I'll rip it up. All right. Let's see if we have any questions real quick. Or if anybody's still with me, because it is kind of boring to watch me color, I'm sure. We have no questions. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you so very much to the amazing moderators, Diane and I Am Her Eminence. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day. We'll be back for Thrilling Thursday tomorrow. So until next time, blessed be.